I have a pretty good history of buying and driving around unusual vehicles. At least, for someone who has never been rich enough to just go out and buy whatever he wants the second he sees it. I'm no one percenter. But I've had some odd vehicles. Like my $400 Chevy Spectrum that I drove for a year. Or the electric scooter that was my main transport for 4 years. Or this. Or my Chinese brand EV that you may have seen a couple videos about. But this time, I think I've outdone myself. It's mid-engined. It's rear-wheel drive. It's got a real manual transmission. It's right-hand drive. That's right, mid-engined, rear-drive JDM car. Sporty, right? Wrong. This is my 1994 Honda Acty pickup. Let's get the basics out of the way. 660cc inline 3-cylinder engine mounted transverse under the bed. Five-speed manual, and you need all 5 gears. About 38 horsepower to work with. That's about the power of 2 lawn tractors put together. And it will do 0 to 60 in, look, we'll get there eventually, alright? Accelerate! Come on! In the words of more than one random Western Pennsylvanian who's engaged me in conversation about this truck, I bet that don't even get out of its own way! And they're right, it doesn't. But it's also probably the most fun vehicle I've ever owned. Oh yeah, let's get a few more FAQs out of the way. No, it's not hard at all to adjust to driving from the other side of the car. Yes, it's cramped in there because I'm tall. Yes, it's fully legal for me to drive it on any road I please. No, I don't take it on the interstate, usually. It gets up to 50 miles per gallon, but realistically, since I'm driving up and down hills all day, it does not get that much, in practice. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's do a tour of the vehicle. From every angle, the Acty looks a little bit different. From the front end here, we have this fat bumper right there on the front. And you can see, I don't have a license plate on it, but if you had a license plate, it would be off-center a little bit to the right, which is kind of weird. And you have these bug-eyed little headlights. So it kind of looks goofy from the front end here. On the side we have this like disproportionately large cab attached to a little tiny bed that's a little bit too low on the back, so it looks a little bit out of proportion. But I mean, even though this bed looks tiny, this is a 6-foot bed, which means it is bigger than the bed on a lot of quad cab pickup trucks. From the back, I think it looks kind of rugged because we have this cage right in front of the rear window there. I guess that's to keep cargo from breaking the rear window is a good guess. And we got these taillights and everything, and the tailgate. You know, it all looks kind of like, I don't know, a little bit more rugged than the other angles of the vehicle. Alright, so let's do a little bit more of a detailed look at the outside of the Acty. So you can see this is from the driver's side. We'll start here, and not much to say here. We just got the standard door handle, door locks. We got this mirror. The only way to adjust either mirror is by manually moving it around with your hand. There's no adjustments inside the car or anything like that. And we've got these rain guards over the window. What the rain guards are for is because when it's raining outside, you actually need to keep the window a little bit cracked. And the reason for that is the cab. As you can see, the cab is just tiny, it's minuscule. And when it's raining outside or when it's especially humid, the windows fog up like crazy very quickly. So this rain guard allows you to crack the window a little bit even when it's raining, and you won't get any rain inside the car, and that allows you to keep it from getting too fogged up. From the driver's side, we come around here, we got this antenna, which is just kind of stuck to the side. They've screwed it on to this corner of the vehicle, and it looks like it would telescope, but it does not telescope. Even though this is the 90s, this is not a telescoping antenna. You can also see on each door, we got these gutters for rain coming off the roof. On the front, you can see all this stuff. The front is a really good bug catcher, as you can see. We get lots and lots of bugs because it's dead flat. The other thing is this car is unfortunately very good at hitting birds. A lot of birds dive in front of it thinking they can just like catch the wave up off the front of the vehicle and over the top, but this flat fronted vehicle just wrecks birds. So sometimes they'll like dip in front of the car and then bunk right off the front of it, which is kind of sad. On the front we've got these tiny little windshield washer knobs here, and they are pretty hilarious. Let me actually do a demonstration of the windshield washers. So here's the windshield washers here, and when you turn them on, they just pee on the windscreen. And also, when you turn the windshield washers on, oddly enough, they do not automatically activate the wipers. So it just pees on the windscreen. Then you have to manually activate the wipers if you want them to do anything. So other things about the front end, I really like this Honda logo here, this big Honda logo right in the center, because it makes it obvious that it's a Honda truck. And I don't know, I just think it's appealing, especially given how large it is compared to the rest of the front end. You can see we got these little baby windshield wipers, but they're enough because the windshield is tiny. Alright, moving back over to the left side, you can see need to do a little bit repair. My bumper has popped off just a little bit and it's kind of broken from the mount, so I'll deal with that sometime. I'm not in a big hurry because it does not fall off any more than this. Passenger side is much like the driver's side. Same thing with the mirror. The mirrors don't really adjust unless you actually use your hand to move them around, which is kind of annoying. But the good thing is it's so small, you can actually reach the passenger mirror from the driver's seat. Now we're coming around to the bed. You can see here we've got, like I was talking about, this awesome cage here, which I just think looks cool. It makes the truck look a little bit more rugged, and also it just helps protect the glass from anything that's being transported. We'll call this an aftermarket accessory for the truck because sometimes I want to carry stuff, but I don't want to carry it in the cab, and I don't want to carry it in the bed because maybe it's raining outside, so I can just throw stuff in this tub and it'll keep it safe from the rain, give me a little bit more storage space. Now down here we got the spare tire. Very interesting location for the spare tire. Kind of exposes it to the weather, but at least you know exactly where it is and it's not in the way. And this is the battery compartment here. So on this side you can also see there's the rear wheel and there's the oil filler cap. And the interesting thing about the oil filler is that it says oil and wheel in French on it, and it has absolutely nothing written in Japanese, even though this truck, as far as I know, was only intended for the Japanese domestic market. And okay, so that's where you put in your oil, but how do you check your oil? Well, you check your oil by going to this dipstick right here behind the rear wheel. See, you can actually just twist it and pull it out. And yeah, you can twist it and pull it out, and there's your dipstick right there. That's how you check the oil in the 1994 Honda Acty pickup. Okay, coming around to the back here, we see a very, very standard taillight assembly, and we've got the tailgate here with more hooks. And here we have a dealer sticker, which says this car comes from a dealership in Kota, Japan. And then over here, we've got these logos here, the Honda, the Acty, and it would say it has 660cc engine in it, which is true. Don't know why they put that on the back, because it's not impressive at all, but there it is. And here it says that our maximum payload is 350 kilograms. You can see also there's like a tow hook, and then this little stubby thing over here, I don't know what that's for. And then we've got a little light to illuminate the license plate. We've also got this little tin can of a muffler that looks like it could have come off of something way smaller than this truck. Another funny thing about the rear of the car is, you know, the front bumper is humongous, and then here we have these tiny little bumpers in the rear corners, just so, I guess if you hit anything with the rear corner, it doesn't damage the car or the, whatever you hit. But it's just hilarious how huge the front bumper is and how little bitty the bumpers in the rear are. Okay, now let's take a look at the interior of the Honda Acty, and I'm going to start with the passenger side here. So on the passenger door, you can see very standard, very basic passenger door from the 90s. I remember this exact same lock from my mother's old Honda Accord back when I was a kid. It's a manual lock. There are no remote locks, obviously. And if you want to lock the passenger side from the driver's side, you just reach over and lock it. There is, of course, hand crank windows, which I love because they will probably never break, much unlike old power windows, which break all the time. And here we've got, you can see here what the sun has done, because we have this nice dark gray, which is probably what the interior kind of looked like originally, and then we have all this pale light gray, which has been overexposed to the sun. Because you can see in this interior, there's glass everywhere, which I love. The visibility is incredible. But what it does mean is that you get a lot of sun exposure. And we have a single speaker right here. There's actually not a speaker in the other door panel, even though it looks exactly the same. We're looking at the dash now. On the passenger side, we've got just a very simple dash with a couple trays up here. Yeah, so these trays aren't really very great because if you put anything in them that is not extremely sticky, they just slide around as you drive. I used to put my phone up here in the middle tray, but it just was so risky because as soon as I went around a turn, the phone would fly over here to the side of the steering wheel or would fly back over to this corner, and it just scared the crap out of me, so I stopped putting it there. We've got a little tray down here to put stuff in, and we have a glove compartment. So you can see this adhesive is dried up, and the adhesive strip that used to hold the door to the rest of the glove compartment has come off. So you got to be careful when you open it because it might just come right out. Oh, you fucker. So that's something we got to replace in the process of restoring this vehicle. So looking at more of the passenger side of the interior, we'll go under the dash here. This clip is for holding a road flare, which did not come with. I'm sure they couldn't ship it with a road flare, just hanging out in there. And these are the OEM floor mats. So they've lasted quite a bit, and usually they look a bit nicer, but I've been using this truck a lot, so they're a little bit dirty right now. We look at the passenger seat, and we can see some evidence that this was a work truck, because there's a handprint just hanging out here. And you can see the seats are actually just bolted straight to the back of the cab, and even the headrests are just screwed into these little mounts here. And one thing that's interesting about the passenger seat, though, is that it comes up and latches up like this. And down below we have this container, which contains orange Fanta. No, that's not actually Fanta. That's the windshield washer bottle, so you can actually see this is where you put your washer fluid in, and it goes through this hose all the way up to the windshield washers up here. Moving on over to the driver's side, as you can see, and as you have been seeing, because this is a JDM car, this is a right-hand drive vehicle, even though I'm using it in the United States, which is a left-hand drive country, but we drive on the right-hand side of the road. Here we've got the vents for the HVAC, except there is no AC, so I guess it's just HV. The vents are fine, except that this one isn't really sturdy enough. If I put my phone in this little clip, which is obviously aftermarket because nobody had cell phones in 1994, it'll often just pull this vent down and slump down like that. So we have the controls for the HV. Like I said, no AC. We've got heating and cooling, very simple. I need to get another nubbin for this because it's been lost. It was not here when I bought the truck. This changes where the air comes out of. Wow. And this is recirculating or not recirculating. I have recirculating turned off. One thing that's funny is if you do any of these knobs, you can just hear everything moving around inside the dash because everything is right there in front of you. There's hardly anything in front of you in this vehicle because you are in front of the vehicle, and actually your butt is right up over the wheel. So that's the heating and ventilation control. There's a few blanks here, which would probably be used if this car had more features, but this is the basest of the based Acty as far as I'm aware, because it is rear-wheel drive, it doesn't have four-wheel drive, it has no AC, and it has a manual transmission, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now here we have the AM-only radio, and I don't think this radio actually works for the US market, because the tuning's just a little bit off. I'll show you. So you can see this is the AM-only radio, and it's got a volume button and a tone, or volume knob rather, and a tone knob to regulate between treble and bass. The only thing is, like, it's only got one terrible speaker in the door, so I don't know what the purpose of changing the treble and the bass settings are. Like, how much could you really do? You press this button to turn the radio on, and you can see the tuning, I don't think matches radios in the United States because the channels all seem to be a bit off, and you can't get anything with decent reception at all. Although, well, this isn't horrible, but it's pretty horrible. Also, there are presets, but I haven't set any of the presets at all. And then here we have a cigarette lighter. I don't smoke, so I don't use the cigarette lighter part of it, but I guess if I wanted to light something on fire, I could use it to do that. But the good thing is it also functions as a power outlet. And I've plugged things into here, and they do work. The only thing that's weird is that this power outlet does not shut off when the car is shut off. So if you leave something plugged into it, it will drain the batteries. Here we have an ashtray, and that doesn't get used for anything right now, and I never take toll roads in this car. Well, in Pennsylvania, you don't even get to use coins for toll roads anymore anyway, so I don't keep anything in there. But one thing we did have that came with the car when I bought it is this 50 yen piece that I've hung off the rear view mirror. So this was in the ashtray when I got the car, and I guess it's come all the way from Japan with the vehicle. Now here is the rear view mirror, and it's not very exciting at all. It's just basic, and you adjust it with your hand. Over here on the ceiling we have the sun visor, which is really difficult to move around. It's really poor quality, it feels terrible, and it doesn't even have a mirror, so if you're the passenger you have no chance of looking at yourself. But something that's odd is that there's like this little dip here in the indentation that it's supposed to fit into, although it'll never fold all the way up there ever again, I'm sure. So I don't know what that's for, if maybe some models of the Acty have a different kind of mirror or something. And there is one oh shit handle above the passenger window. So the passenger has no shit handle, but the driver does not. And the driver's side also has a visor, and this visor also has no mirror, but what it does have is some warnings, and I cannot read all of the warnings because I can only read kanji, and that's only because I can read Chinese. I don't know Japanese at all. So, although I can read some of it, all I know for sure is it's a bunch of warnings. So you can also see here in the dashboard, this looks like where a clock should go, and I'm going to look for an aftermarket clock. And actually, I may not even look for aftermarket, I may just look for something in an old Honda at a junkyard. Here's the instrument cluster. You can see very, very basic, very simple. Even though this is a manual, there's no tachometer. You've just got a temperature gauge, a fuel gauge, and a speedometer and an odometer. And the speedometer is in kilometers an hour. But one thing that's really nice about the speedometer is even though you don't have a tach, it shows you about where you should change from first to second and from second to third. And if you're in fourth and fifth, you're on your own. You have to figure that out yourself. Now, the one thing that's really weird to get used to with this truck is the engine redlines somewhere around 8,500 RPM. And even though you can't see that, when you're driving, sometimes you're revving it really high and it feels wrong, but it's just not wrong. It's okay to rev this engine that high. You can see the odometer is in kilometers as well, and it's quite low mileage for being a 1994 model. Also, we've got a bunch of warning lights, such as the battery, oil, brakes, toast. I don't know, that's probably exhaust heat or something like that. I don't know what that one is. And it even has a seatbelt warning light to tell you that your seatbelt's not on, which is pretty insane given how simple this car is. And turn signal indicators, and the high beam indicator, but you can't really see it unless it's nighttime. Alright, and then on top of the steering column, we have this for turning on the hazard lights. I'll turn them back off. And we've got our horn, which is pretty hilarious. Over here we've got our windshield wipers. There is no intermittence, there's just low and high. And then if I want to pull on this like I showed before, you get a little, they call it a mist, I call it pee. And on the other side, we have our headlights. So we got turn signals, obviously, and parking lights, and full-on headlights, and then you snap it back for high beams. Now the interesting thing here is that it has an indicator here that says high, low, and pass. So I think maybe it's customary in Japan to flash your high beams before you pass somebody. Actually, thinking about it, I have seen people in China flash their high beams to warn people that they're passing them. So maybe it's the same thing in Japan. I don't know. And you can see here we got the key ignition. It does off, accessory on, and of course start. And one thing is interesting about this car, because it's so old, is you can start it. I said you can start it. Okay. So one thing that's nice about this car is you can start it, and then you can take the key right out of it and it still runs. I don't think it came that way. I think it's just because the vehicle is old. And over here we have this tiny little cubby for storage. I don't put anything in there because I just figure it'll fall out while I drive and then just land on the floor and get in my way and I'll step on it or something like that. And we got another vent here, and we got our defrost vents here as well as in the front by the windscreen. Other things about the driver's side, there's this little blank for a speaker, but there's no speaker there, and you can see there's wires that would lead to it if there were. We've got this sticker recommending scheduled maintenance at 90,200 kilometers, and I'm going to take it to the dealership just for shits and giggles and see what they say when I bring this in for its scheduled maintenance. Other things about the driver's side, there is a little bit of space under the seat for storage, I guess, if you wanted to put something under there. There's also a hole in the floor. And tiny little pedals. Clutch on the left, brake and gas on the right. And look at that throttle. That's so bizarre. It just goes into this little box next to the gas pedal. So finally in the center console, we've got our handbrake, and we have our shift lever, which is the standard 5-speed H pattern that I've had in every 5-speed Honda I've ever owned or driven. Doesn't want to go into reverse right now. There we go. So that's basically the interior of the Honda Acty. So what's driving the Acty like? Well, you know how the first time you do something really dangerous, for example, maybe you take a roller coaster for the first time in your life, and while you're on the roller coaster, while you're on the ride, you're clicking up that hill and you start to feel like really scared and really nervous, and you know the whole experience is you're kind of terrified, but then as soon as you get off of it, the first thing you want to do is get back in line and get back on that roller coaster. Well, the Acty is kind of like that. I remember the first day I bought it, I had to drive it about 45 minutes through all kinds of like winding, hilly roads and stuff to get back to my place. And it's hard to overstate how rolly it feels and how you think you're going to flip over and die around every single corner because it's tall, it's got these narrow tires, and I think the biggest thing is actually not about the design of the vehicle itself, it's the fact that you're on the right-hand side of the car. So you get this sensation, roads are set up to drain. So if you're on the right-hand side of the car, you feel like you're dipping really low sometimes because you're on the downside of the road. So it's really unsettling at first to drive the car. So that part does take some getting used to. And then also going up hills, you can't maintain the speed limit if you go up any reasonably steep hill. The engine just can't handle it. It's got like 38 horsepower and it just can't keep you up to speed going up hills. But anyway, it's slow. You feel like you're going to roll over and die all the time. It's very unsafe. There are basically no safety features in the vehicle, not even ABS. There's no air conditioning, so during the summer you have the windows open really wide, and you get just wind all over your face and in your hair and stuff, and you can't keep a decent hairstyle if you're driving the vehicle unless you want to fry to death instead in the sun. The glove compartment self-ejects. There is very little leg room, even if you push the seat as far back as it'll go, except you can't do that because the seat is in one place, and that is one size fits all, and it doesn't really fit you unless you're relatively short. And if you change gears, it's almost impossible to do it without touching your passenger's thigh. Oh yeah, and there's this part where if there's even like a little bit of holes in the road and stuff like that, it rattles like crazy, and the suspension is really stiff and it's super uncomfortable, especially on bad roads. And that all sounds really terrible, doesn't it? But here's the thing, it's not. This thing is just a blast to drive. Once you get the handle on it, once you get a handle on it and figure out how to not be so afraid of going around turns because you're not actually going to roll, it just feels scary, and how you learn to steer around the bumps and how you learn to manage the shifting as much as you can to try to keep as much speed as possible going up a hill. It's just such a unique experience, and it's also almost like something you have to learn, something you have to master, and that's what makes it so great to drive, because it becomes your vehicle. If anybody else gets in it, they have to learn it too, so you feel really cool when you can handle it properly on the roads, and also the environment I use it in is basically rural Pennsylvania, rural suburban, we'll call it that, and this is actually a city truck. It's designed to operate in a Japanese city, which is definitely not what I'm using it for. So if you kind of master it in that environment and you can drive it well, and I daily it because it gets such good gas mileage, I use it a lot, and it's just miles of smiles. And the other thing, of course, that's fun about it is that it really attracts attention. If you're driving around, people will shout things out their window at you. Like I had a guy just shout "awesome" out his window at me as I drove by, and start a lot of conversations in parking lots and stuff like that. Everybody wants to know about this truck because it's different, but it's not just different. And it's not just rare, it's also approachable. If I rolled up and say like a Lamborghini or something fancy like that, they'd be like, oh, this guy is really rich and he probably doesn't want to be bothered. But if you roll up in a Honda Acty, it's a very approachable vehicle. People want to know about it, and they're willing to strike up conversations with you about it. So that's really nice part of the ownership. And despite its small size, it is actually unbelievably useful because it's got a 6-foot bed on it that can be turned into a flatbed, which means you can haul a lot of stuff. As long as it's not real heavy, you can haul a lot of stuff in the back of this vehicle. So that's the driving experience. It's definitely an acquired taste, but once you acquire that taste, it's just brilliant. So it might occur to you to ask why I even have this vehicle. I mean, it's so impractical in so many ways, but then it is also so practical in so many other ways. But the reason I have it is because when I saw it, I just had to have it. It just looked so cool and so unique and so fun. The price was one I could accept, and I was looking for a kind of toy like this. I just moved back to the United States not too long ago, and I wanted to get back into cars and stuff, and this seemed like the perfect way to do that. So that's the one reason, but the other reason is that a couple friends and I are actually going to try to convert this into an electric vehicle. Now, we're not in a big hurry, because it runs really well, and I don't want to take apart something that's already amazing and, change it into something that could end up being worse just because, it's this kind of conversion project is kind of a crapshoot, and we've never done one before. But on the other hand, it will make the vehicle even more unique and even more interesting. So yeah, we are converting this into an electric vehicle, slowly but surely. And if you want to see what we're doing, we are chronicling what we're doing on YouTube. The channel is Acty DCTY, and there'll be a link in the description for that. So that's my tiny Japanese truck. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't care if you like and subscribe. I wouldn't mind it if you checked out the other channel, though. And I'm probably not going to post any updates about the vehicle or anything like that here because it simply is happening on the other channel. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you see one of these on the road, honk your horn, give them a wave. And that's it.